What's up, y'all? In this video, I'll go over an interesting looper workflow that you can use on the Roland P-6. So the P-6 doesn't have a dedicated looper like on the SP404 Mark II, but you can use the delay effect to create a loop buffer which you can then sample or add more layers to. So let's check it out. The way this works is by using the delay effect and maxing out the feedback and the level parameters, and then setting the sync parameter to 1/1. Now when you have the effect active, any sounds you play will be recorded into the delay buffer and will play back in an endless 1-bar loop. So let's go through building a beat with this technique, starting with the rhythm section. When you're starting with a blank slate, it helps to turn the metronome on so you know where you're at in the loop. The shortcut to turn on the metronome is holding pattern and then pressing record. So let's add in some drums. I just need to press the delay button, and now what I play will get recorded into the buffer. An important part of this workflow is disabling the delay effect, which will make it so your notes don't get added to the delay buffer. So it's a way to audition sounds or rehearse your groove without overriding the delay buffer. Then when you're ready to add your notes to the buffer, you press the delay button and jam along. Although I messed up with this take, and unfortunately there's no undo button, you just have to start over with an empty delay buffer. And you can quickly erase the delay buffer by enabling and then disabling any other effect. Okay, let's try that again. The P-6 doesn't have any velocity sensitive buttons, but you can reduce the volume of the sounds you add to the buffer by adjusting the level knob of the pads you're playing, which is a good tactic for adding ghost notes. When you're ready to capture the loop, press the sampling button, then select a blank pad. There's not a simple way to capture the loop at the exact start of the pattern, but there are a few somewhat reliable methods. The first method is recording your loop playing twice, so I'll turn the start knob and set this to 2 bars. If it doesn't let you set it to 2, you might need to change the recording to mono by turning the pitch knob, or reduce the sample rate by pressing the lo-fi button to have more recording time. And I'll turn the end knob to change the recording type to trigger off. Since it doesn't matter when I start the recording because the loop will play twice, I'll just press the sampling button and start the recording. Once the recording finishes, the buffer will still be playing, so you have to enable and then disable any other effect to clear the buffer. And now that the recording is saved, I can adjust the start point to where the loop starts by turning the start knob. And it's a good idea to try to dial in the endpoint too in case you want to slice the sample. So I'll enable loop mode by pressing the loop button. And now as the loop plays, I'll adjust the endpoint using the end knob until it sounds right. Once I've got the start and the end point dialed in, I'll disable loop mode and then add a note for this pad to the first step of this pattern. And now the loop will play in time with the pattern when I press the play button. One thing you need to do after every loop you sample is disable the pad from going to the effect bus. So you have to hold the MFX button and then press the pad where you saved the loop to. Now that sample won't get added to the next loop that you record, so it keeps the loop layers independent. Now let's get a layer with some additional percussion sounds. Okay, I'm ready to record this loop, so I'll press sample and then select a blank pad. This time, instead of recording the loop twice, I'm going to try to time the recording press correctly so I only need to record 1 bar. So I'll turn the start knob left so the display reads 1. Another thing you have to do when sampling additional layers is mute any other sounds you have playing. The shortcut to mute a pad is holding Shift and then pressing that pad. Now that the first layer is muted, it's a little hard to time the recording right at the start, so I'll also turn the metronome back on, and I'll try to time when I press the sampling button right on the metronome. And this time we don't need to fiddle with the start point, just drop a note into step 1 and then press play. Although the P-6 will normalize the recording, so you may need to adjust the volume of the pad with the level knob. And then just like before, I'll disable this loop from going to the FX bus by holding MFX and pressing the pad. You can also capture audio coming in from the line in or USB using this technique. So in this example, I'm going to use another sampler to play sounds into the delay buffer on the P-6. One other neat trick with using the delay looper workflow is changing the tempo to increase the length of the loop. So my pattern's currently playing at 91 BPM, and my delay sync is set to the max, 1/1, which lets me loop 1 bar. But if I change my tempo to 45.5, which is half of 91, that makes it so the delay buffer is twice as long, 2 bars instead of 1. You can change the BPM in increments of 0.1 by holding Shift and then turning the main encoder knob. Now everything plays at half speed, but you can fix that by holding Shift and then pressing the menu button, and then selecting the pattern scale parameter. And then you adjust this to 1/32. This makes the sequencer move through the pattern at twice the speed, so it basically makes our 45.5 BPM pattern play at our original BPM, 91. So it sounds the same as before, but now we get 2 bars to play with in the delay buffer. And even though it's looping 2 bars of the 91 BPM pattern, it's only 1 bar of the halftime BPM that we set. So I only need to have the recording length setting with the start knob set to 1 to capture the full loop. Although now I need to double the length of the pattern so that both of the bars can play out. So I'll hold Shift and press copy, and then select the duplicate option to make the pattern twice as long. And you may need to move the note around a little bit depending on when you started the recording. So here it sounds right if I trigger it a little bit later, because I think I pressed the recording button too late. And there are a few things to keep in mind when using this workflow. One odd limitation I found is that if you're using the half BPM trick, you can't set the BPM to be less than 44, which would be 88 in normal time. If you make it less than 44, then the delay buffer will go out of sync. So here's an example. With the BPM at 44, the snare I put on step 1 plays at the exact same time when the pattern loops. But when I set the BPM to 43, the snare plays a little early. I think this has to do with the limit on the length of the recording buffer, but I'm not 100% sure. Another limitation is that you can't have more than 8 notes sequenced on a single step, so the maximum number of loop layers you can trigger at once is 8. So that's how to use the P-6 as a looper. It's actually quite a fun workflow once you get used to the controls, and it's very flexible since you can toggle whether sounds get added and record the loop at any point, as well as work with external audio. Well, that does it for this video. Thanks for watching, see you next time.